All right, Michael. So I think this will be the final segment on this introduction to prime matter. And, so last time we talked a little bit, started to get an overview or a sense of how the world works, and how prime matter operates in it. So prime matter is a first but incomplete natural principle of being and becoming. Okay, and here, the term natural could be equivalent to the term physical. Physis in Greek is translated in Latin as nature, so natural, physical, things that are, again, we'll have a chance to go over the concept of nature later on in depth. Prime matter is neither generated nor corrupted. This is what we talked about last time. Okay, so today I want to mention the relationship between matter and quantity. So prime matter itself has no quantity because prime matter is no thing and only things have quantity. But matter is associated with the accident of quantity. So quantity is an accident of a substance, right? A substance can have more or less quantity. And matter has a special association with the accident of quantity. And here's a quote from Father Dodd's book that maybe can help drive that point. An overweight dog becomes obese not because of its substantial form, right? Because it's still a dog. The substantial form has not changed, right? But because perhaps through overfeeding, a great deal of matter, meaning a possibility of being, right? A great deal of potency that was once actualized as dog chow has become actualized as dog. Okay? So this great, the great deal of potency that was one kind of matter becomes another kind of, one kind of actualized matter becomes another kind of actualized matter. And the quantity of dog essentially increases as such. So there's a relationship between matter and quantity, even though matter itself has not quantity per se. But in existing things, there's sort of a connection between matter and quantity. So prime matter is associated with the accident of quantity, but in itself has no quantity. And that's important to know because we don't want to think of matter as some kind of three-dimensional canvas, if you will. I mean, it's not like matter is, has dimension itself, and then you have the things that occupy whatever the quantity of matter was there to begin with, okay? So matter per se has no quantity, and quantity really is only a property of things that, once they're existing, of actual substances, okay? So that's an important point, and it's a point that actually matters. It's a point about matter that matters. When we talk about matter as a principle of individuation, which I mentioned, early on, briefly. So prime matter is the principle of individuation, but it's not really prime matter itself. It's really prime matter considered together with the accident of quantity that is the principle of individuation. So it's prime matter together with the accident of quantity that is the principle of individuation. And again, here I have another quote that is, I think, helpful. Prime matter considered in itself is pure potency with no actuality to distinguish this prime matter from that prime matter, right? There's no distinction to prime matter. Prime matter is just the principle of pure potency. It's an incomplete principle. And you cannot, when you look at, consider prime matter by itself, distinguish this prime matter from that prime matter. But primary matter of this substance, considered together with the accident of quantity, is distinguishable from primary matter of that substance. Okay, when you have existing substances, then you can distinguish their own primary matters. And quantity, which implies extension, we'll have a lesson on quantity and extension and subsequently, but here quantity, which implies extension in space, which implies parts distinguishable in terms of place. So primary matter in association with the accident of quantity accounts for the multiplication of a species in many individuals. Okay, So again, this is a brief sketch, just a beginning of an idea, but this is how prime matter is the principle of individuation, right? And it's not substantial form that is the principle of individuation, because all the individual member of the species, they all have the same form, right? It's going to be cow, cow, cow. Each one of these cows is cow. They all have the substantial form, the same substantial form, but they're individualized by virtue of prime matter in association with the accident of quantity. Very interesting, very still very embryonic doctrine in the philosophy of nature that deserve and a lot more elaboration, and is beginning to get attention sort of philosophically as to how that works. But that's a point I wanted to make here about primary matter. And the final point here is that so matter is made to exist, if you will, by form, and then is disposed by form. So existence, if we're going to use that term, is properly predicated of the substance, right? It is things that actually exist. Okay, this cow, that tree, you, me, this water in the pond or in the faucet or whatever, So these existing things, these things properly exist. But matter is made to exist once it is actualized by form. And next time in the subsequent lessons, when we talk about form, we'll understand how that works. Okay, so existence is properly predicated of substance, and it's made to exist. Matter is made to exist by form, but matter is disposed by the substantial form it possesses. It is accidentally disposed by the substantial form it possesses. What means is that when matter is made to exist by form, and it possesses a certain form, it's actualized by a certain form, this disposition of matter limits the kind of substantial form it can subsequently acquire. That's why, for example, an armadillo is not disposed to become a brick of gold, right? An armadillo is disposed to become, if it's going to change, primarily to become a carcass, okay? If it's going to acquire another form, it's going to acquire a certain kind of other form or certain kinds of other forms. But it's not the pure potency of matter that makes this thing that exists, become anything else, okay? It's going to have a certain disposition. The tree is going to be, the matter in the tree is going to be is disposed by the form of tree to become maybe ashes, okay? If the tree is struck by lightning, but the tree itself is not going to become a human being, right? It's the prime matter in the tree is not, even though the prime matter in the tree is pure potency and can receive any kind of form, the fact that it has the form of tree presently gives it a certain disposition, okay, for the subsequent form it might acquire. Again, another quote here. We can understand this notion of disposition by considering the analogy with accidental change. When you take a cube of moist clay and you drop it, it is more likely to attain the shape of a lopsided cube than the shape of a perfect sphere, right? Because its initial accidental form of a cube, gives it a certain disposition that it's more likely to become, a lopsided cube and so forth, and much less likely to become a sphere, unless there's a lot of things that happen to this shape, to get it to that point, right? This is not because clay as such is more disposed to the accidental form of squareness rather than roundness, but it's because the square form of the clay presently possesses disposes it more to some accidental forms than others. Okay, so it's just the analogy here on the level of accidental form. The same thing happens on the level of, prime matter and substantial form. Okay, and that's it. So I just wanted to review, give a summary of the points that we've hit so far. So prime matter is a real principle of being in the physical world, so, right? It's out there. It's not just in the mind. It's out there. It's operating in the physical world. It is an incomplete principle of being and becoming. It does not exist in itself, but it is in existing things. It is actualized or made to exist by substantial form, as we will see later on. Prime matter is the principle of potency, right? It allows something to become something else. right? It allows the change to happen. It is neither generated nor corrupted, okay, but it is the principle of corruption. Prime matter has no quantity, but is associated with the accident of quantity. And then prime matter together with the accident of quantity is the principle of individuation. And prime matter is disposed, as we just saw, by its present form, which limits the kind of form it can subsequently possess. Okay? And that's it for here. Next time we'll tackle substantial form. We'll do the same thing. We'll just sort of focus on substantial form and its properties and what it means, you know, what it means. And then after that, we'll put the two together in the composite or the substance. And then we'll because that, you know, all this new way of considering the world raises, you know, inevitably raises questions. We'll contrast this Aristotelian worldview with other alternative worldviews and bring up some objections and how these objections are answered and that sort of thing. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions here?
I think it'd be better to wait for questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
See you next time.